Hi, today I'm going to show you how you can create a dynamic Finsweet table in Wized working with data coming from your database or API endpoint. And the wonderful thing is this table even has superpowers, meaning let's click in the Finsweet table record. As you can see, I just copied Finsweet to my clipboard. Let's click into unknown right here. As you can see, I just copied unknown to my clipboard. Now let's click on Studio Form. For example, we'll have that in our clipboard as well. Attribula. I don't know what that is. We have that in here too. iGraph, for example, we'll have that in here too. So we can actually copy the different row cells to our clipboard. We can delete items like this, and I can copy the whole row as text, for example, like this. Look at that. I can download the row as a text file. Look at that. Oh, here you go. We got the text file downloaded. And I can also download the whole table as a CSV file. Let's open my files in Arc. Here you go. We have the CSV file downloaded like this, and where it's free, it just leaves out the numbers. But yeah, we have that downloaded as well. So let's just remove this. Let's close this. And let me show you how you can build this yourself using Finsweet Tables, Wized, and Xano, or whatever backend you want to use. So let's go to Wized real quick. And this is the general overview. So first of all, we need to render a list from this template component. The template component is the first one. This is what gets cloned throughout each iteration of the array. So let's even get one step back and go to Webflow. So we have a Finsweet table. You can just copy any Finsweet table or design your own one. Important is you only need one row in that table because we're going to duplicate the rows from our database data. So you only need one row. So you can use whatever table you want to use. Just make sure you have one row. And we need to apply an attribute to this one row. We need to add Wized, and then we can name it however we want. I named it Finsweet table row so that Wized can recognize this table row. And then we need to go into the different cells, and Finsweet table will normally have like text blocks or in there with some styling. I wouldn't use that. I would just have in the normal text block, the normal custom element, have the text in there to improve the user experience and to make it easier to work with that in an HTML table. So you have the cell, and we're just going to add text in there as a placeholder, but it is not needed. Important is that we need to apply on each cell of the row. So each one of those, besides this one, each one where we want to have text in, we need to add an attribute, a Wized attribute, in this case of row ID. And in here, a Wized attribute of row product name. And in this one, for example, a Wized attribute of row price. And in this one, for example, a Wized attribute of row supplier. And for the PO number, a Wized attribute of row PO number. And that's how easy that is. And then we can copy in field, don't apply any Wized attribute to it, and apply like a div block in here that will hold some settings that will then be related to the row. And those buttons in here now contain Wized attributes so that Wized can interact with them. In this case, delete it. And in this case, Wized attribute for copy this item. And we have another attribute for Wized attribute to download the row as a text file. And now you ask yourself, wait a sec. If we render a list and we add those buttons in here, how does it know that it is for this row item and not for the fifth row item? Very easy, because you have it nested in your list template element. So we have this, remember from the beginning, we have the Finsweet table row in here. So this is the template row. And whatever is in this row will get cloned. So those buttons will get cloned during each iteration when we show the data in the row. So the wonderful thing about that is if we use the V iterator that we apply on it when we render the list, those will have a unique ID and they will be linked to whatever row comes next. But I'll be showing you how to do this in Wized right now. Let's just make sure to save the progress, and that is it. And then just for cosmetical purposes, you may want to add Wized cloak in here to avoid content flashing. Perfect. So let's go back to Wized and let me show you how this works. So first of all, we need to configure our app. So we're just setting up our endpoint and we're setting up our request, which is just a simple GET request that will get the data from our Xano database, this one, using the Xano API endpoint, this one in here, and we will just call the endpoint to get the data from the database. Very simple. And once we have that data in here, we're going to work with it a bit. In this case, as you can see, when I reload this, it will add one by one in there. This is not needed. I just added this as an animation because I thought that looks amazing. So what we're doing actually, if you look, keep an eye on the table contacts and this request in here. We get the information in this request and we're adding one in here, wait a few seconds, one in here, wait and again and again. So we're adding those manually in this array, and let me show you how this looks. See, nothing is in here, one is added, and it will add always new data to this array based on the request we made in here. You don't need that, but I just added this to show that this is also something that is possible using a loop. But yeah, let's get right started in here. So we have this API request, and we want to perform this API request of products to get the product data whenever we start loading the page. As you can see here, we're loading that data. And this is what we're doing. So whenever I start the page, not add a query parameter, start the page, we'll see that this request is being performed. Perfect. And then we have the animation add to list. So what this is doing, this code is basically taking whatever is in here and adding the first item in this array, in this variable, in this array, in this variable. And then taking the second item after it waited for a bit and adding this in here again. And taking the third item and waiting a bit and adding this in here. So that way we get this step-by-step animation because we only, from our response, add one item at a time in there. And that's how we get this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on animation. You don't need that. You can get rid of that and just have the variable equal the response from your API call. But I just thought that's a little nice animation, so I added that in there. This really shows that you can build anything, any funky idea you have going on in your head, you can build it in Wized very easily. So let's go into the content. So this is where the magic begins. We have those fields in here. So first of all, we have the template field from the list, and we got to make some magic happen in here. So let's keep an eye on this first row in here. Perfect. So we see that we have this blue outline in here. This is the template item. And based on this item, we're going to render all cloned items that will show different data down here. So we're going to go into this item, this one, and we're going to take the action render list. And we're going to render the list from our variable now containing all of those in here. And if we were to be quick here and there's nothing yet in here, it will only show this much. And then we add new information in there, it will render it from multiple ones and so on. This is how we're going to create this animation that it adds one by one, which looks like it's loading something live from a database, even though it is not. It already processed. So yeah, this is a nice geeky thing. Oh, here we go. And here's the iterator. So we apply this v-iterator in here, which is just a variable containing a null value. So it is just return 0, right? Not a null, a 0 value, actually. So we apply this v-iterator, and this will become very important. We apply this to each row. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So we have this iterator, which is the index of the row. And now, when we go to set the row index, since the iterator, and let's even get one step back, if I go to row index, we see we have this field right here that will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But our iterator starts at 0. Nobody starts counting at 0. So what we want to do is we take the value of the v-iterator for each iteration and add +1 on there, because we know we start at 0. But think of it like this. If we were to remove this, we would get the ID of each object in our array, in the variable of each list item. And this is actually their ID. If I tell the system, hey guys, I need 11, it will know, okay, that's iGraph $19 from unknown, and this is the PO number. You want to download it, copy it, or delete it. So this is how the v-iterator works. This is the ID. But we cannot start from counting from 1. So on the front end, we just show this ID for each row +1. This will not influence anything we do on the back end. This is just for cosmetical purposes to make it easier for the user to understand that this is the first item, just for cosmetical purposes. And let's go to the name. So we have, and this is the same principle across all rows. So let me share this with you. We have those fields in here. And they're just cells where we set text in them. So let's take this cell. It's the same principle like the ID. And for the ID, again, we do set text and set plain text, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So we target the ID cell, this cell right here. And in this cell, we're going to set text for, again, the iterator +1. So it counts up with the items in the array. And then we do the same principle for the row name. We take the row product name and we do set text, plain text, and we're going to use dot notation within our array in here to get the matching product name for whatever iteration using the iterator of the variable array we're in. So how does this work? Think of it like this. We have this array in here, but we only want to show the name. So we know we need to target the name, but we also need to target not every name. We need to target the current iteration we're in. We know this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and so up. So we can simply say, you know what? Remember, we rendered this using the v-iterator. So let's get the v-iterator in here involved again, so that as you can see, the magic is already happening on the side, so that we can reference back to the current iteration, to the current item we're in. It's a bit like Webflow CMS, where you just, when you add an item in there, it's already applied, it already gets the dynamic data. We have to do this manually in here. So we do .name. This is the extension, think of it like .com. This is the extension to get, for the current iteration, not the created at date, not the ID date, but to get the name of it. So we use this extension to get the name, and as you can see, it is working. We have the name in here for each current iteration, so it's not always the same name. And then we have on event click, we're going to copy the name to clipboard. So when I click the same item where we render the text in, this one, I will copy the current name to the clipboard. So this is very simple. We have the function of return.clipboard.writeText, and we put in here the same value we put in here to render the text, because we don't want to render anything else. If you want to copy something else, you can add something else in there. But this is just, we want to copy what is in here, so we apply it to the same value that we set in the render text action in here. And this same principle applies to all of those items in here. So if we were to go to the price, we see it's the same setup, but now we're just doing .price and we're doing the plus operator. So because we don't just want to show a number, we want to put a $ in a string, and then we do a plus to merge the $ in the string with the current value of the iteration to show the value as a dollar amount and not just as a number. And then we have the same principle in here to copy that price. And actually, I could also do $ in here plus, and now I would to copy it with a dollar amount, which is even better. So you can always improve your builds as well. And then we do the same thing with a row supplier. We just do .supplier using the v iterator, so we get the dynamic data. And then on event, we're going to do navigation.clipboard.writeText for the same value for .supplier. We do the same thing with the PO number, .PO number. And important is never use minuses, only use underscores, because that won't work with JavaScript. You have to use underscores. Perfect. And then we do the same thing in here. So it is the same process, and always use v iterator. So this is the content we're rendering in here. Now we're going to go to the fun part, actually deleting the items and copying them and downloading them. Look at that. Like, ooh, I got all the downloads happening here. Perfect. So first of all, let's start with the easy one, delete. And this is again where the v iterator comes super handy. So we have this applied to the attribute we added on the delete button. So on event click, we're going to run the function to have the table content, so the variable that we're rendering the list from, equal everything besides the ID of the current row that I clicked in. So when I click on this button in this row, we'll have the row ID. This is the one in here with ID. We target this one. And this is unique for every row item. This is not the index. This is the ID we're going to get from Xano. So we have our IDs in the database, and we're going to reference it by those. You can use another ID system if you want to, but this is what I would recommend because it is already in Xano, and it is already the IDs to use anyway if you want to do a data sync later on. So we take the ID of the current iteration, because we're using the v iterator, and then we target it by .id to get the extension. And we say in here, you know what, this variable, table underscore content, we do a filter, and we want to look for items where the item ID, the ID in here, doesn't equal the ID of the current row that we are in. So we filter everything out of this array besides that is the item that we're on right now. So when we click on here, we say, okay, this, you know, this ID, I want this array returned without this ID. I don't like that one. And then I'm going to have this equal the original version of v.table underscore content. So we're actually not deleting something out. We're actually filtering it out. When I say, you know, tables, Finsweet Tables, I don't like that at all. Of course I do. I love it. It is just an HTML table, so AG grid is still my favorite. So let's say we don't want them in here, hypothetically. I were to say now, you know what, Wized, I have this array, and I want everything in this array besides this ID that is attached to Finsweet Tables. I will click on there, it will remove it out, and it will set it as the response it gets from there, it will set as the new value of the variable, the table underscore content in here, that will then render this list. This is why it will disappear from this list. And yeah, now let's go to the download. And we have a similar principle applied to that. So we target the download, not the download, excuse me, the copy button. So we target the copy button in here, and we have on event click, and we're going to run a function of const. So this is how we define something within a run function. So we do text list item equals, and then we do product name, and then we merge it with the current iteration of the extension name. And then we have price, and we're going to do a plus. We merge it with the price from the variable. It is the same principle how we did with the set text in the cells. Now we're just going to do this all under each other. And we always have plus and then comma, space, plus. So we merge it into a string that can be read by a human, right? So we're going to format that. We do the same thing with the supplier, and then we take the variable of the iteration. We always want to use the v-iterator. We always want to get it dynamically. Otherwise, we get whatever row we copy in the same name. We don't want that. So we need to use the v-iterator that is attached to the list to get the dynamic iteration data. We do dot supplier, and then we do plus, comma, space in a string. It needs to be a string. And then we do plus, and now comes the last item, PO number, and we do space, and then we do plus, and then we do the extension for the PO number, and there is no comma after here because that's the end of the list. And then we do return navigator to clipboard dot write text, and we do text list item. This is what we defined in here. So we set this data in here, including all the results from the dynamic data from the v-iterator ones. This is now called text list item. So we can just, instead of referencing back through all of this and putting that in here, we can just simply define it on top of here in this one and just reference it to all of this data back just with a name, which is quite amazing. And that's the power of Wized. You can do it simple. And now let's do the download. It's quite of a similar principle. We have the download row item text from array button, and we reference to that using the attribute we added on there in Webflow. And then we do on event, click, run function. And this is a whole function. We're going to create a blob. But everything you need to know about this is we have this function that we defined up here, or not we, ChatGPT did. So we have this function that ChatGPT defined up here. This will turn an array, so a list of objects, into an CSV, right? And we define this on top of here. So we tell them, system, when I call this function, this is what you got to do. And then we do the same principle we have for the copy text. So we're going to say, or not CSV, excuse me. This will be the text file. This is not for the whole list. This is only for the list item. So when I download this, it will be only for this row. So actually, we're converting this text into a text file that can be downloaded. Not a CSV, it's a text file. So we're going to actually define the string of items in here, how we did for the copy to clipboard. But instead of now copying it to the clipboard, we are just going to take to download the file as a text file. So we do download text file, and we reference back to list item, and then we reference back to this one in here with all of that we have defined, that this will equal it. And then we need to set the text file name. So we will have, we will take the name of the item. In this case, for the first one, it would be Figma. And then we do plus.txt. You always need to do the extensions when you download files, otherwise you may get issues downloading the files. So this after the comma is a complete separate thing that will just define the file name. In this case, figma.txt, so that when you download the file, it will have a relevant name. Like you can see in here, it will say right here, figma.txt. And you need to show those file names. Perfect. And then we have the exciting thing where we can actually download the CSV of the whole table, as I already showed you earlier. Oh, still getting used to Arc. Here you go. So this one, the CSV. Perfect. So how we're going to do this is very simple. On click of this button, on event click, defined to this button, we added the attribute on. By the way, I forgot to show you how to add the attribute. So it's just this button here. We just have the Wized attribute of CSV export button added to it. So on-click of this button where we have the attribute added on, on-click, we do a run function, and this is a run function. This is a function in here that will turn an array into a CSV file and return a blob. And if you don't know what a blob is, I made a whole video about that. So it will turn a blob file, which is a file link that only exists on your browser, and then open this link. And while opening this link, download this file to your browser. And this is the function we defined to do that. And we just call this function down here. As you can see, download object file is the same name as it here. So we tell computer what you do in here. We call this now to simplify download object array as CSV. And whenever I call this back, this is the temp that you gotta work by. And I will pass you on this dynamic variable so that you can do this workload dynamically. And this is what we're going to do in here. And then this will end up when we click on here that we will download the whole CSV file of our Finsweet table. And that's all the magic you need to know about this. This is it. And yeah, I hope that this really helped you and that you're going to build up a lot of exciting stuff using Finsweet Tables and Wized, which really is a power team. And if you need to work with more complex things, I highly recommend you to check into the videos I made about a G-grid, because I really love that. I mean, it is amazing. And Finsweet table has some limitations because it is a HTML table and it is not the most popular thing to use. For a lot of data, you may want to look into using div blocks for those. But Finsweet tables are great if you're building an MVP, if you're building a simple list and you just need to render some data on your Wized app. And if it's not a million records, it will completely handle that. But again, you may have some design limitations because it is an HTML table and not multiple div blocks attached to each other. But it is a really good thing. It makes the process a lot easier to work with it. So I really hope that you're now building a lot of exciting apps with Finsweet table and Wized. And yeah, please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help. And also, thank you so much for all your support. I really appreciate that. And see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.